The sun was setting over the Texas plains in 1847 when 12-year-old Billy heard the sound. It was weak, barely a whisper carried on the evening wind. He stopped walking and listened carefully. There it was again. Someone was in trouble. Billy had been checking the family's water traps near Willow Creek, something he did every evening before dark. His pa always said to be back before the last light faded. The frontier was dangerous, especially for a boy alone, but that sound made him pause. He followed the noise through the tall grass, his heart beating faster with each step. What he found changed everything. There, lying beside the creek, was a man unlike anyone Billy had ever seen up close. The stranger's skin was bronze. His long black hair was braided with feathers, and his clothes were made of soft leather decorated with colorful beads. But what caught Billy's attention most was the blood. The man was badly hurt. A bullet wound in his shoulder was still bleeding, and his breathing was shallow and quick. His eyes were closed, but Billy could tell he was still alive. Barely. Billy knew this was a Comanche warrior. His pa had told him stories about the fierce tribe that roamed these lands. Some settlers feared them, others hated them. There had been fights between his people and the Comanche for years. His pa always said to stay away from them, that they were dangerous. But looking at this man now, Billy didn't see danger. He saw someone who needed help. The warrior's eyes suddenly opened. They were dark brown and filled with pain, but also with intelligence. For a moment, the two just stared at each other. The young white boy and the wounded Comanche warrior. Neither moved. Billy could have run. He should have run. That's what everyone would have told him to do. Instead, he knelt down beside the stranger. The warrior tried to speak, but only a weak sound came out. Billy could see he was dying. Without water and medicine, this man wouldn't see another sunrise. Billy looked around nervously. No one else was nearby, but that could change quickly. If other Comanche were looking for this warrior, they might not be happy to find a white boy with him. If Billy's pa found out what he was thinking about doing, there would be serious trouble. But the man's eyes held Billy's attention. They weren't the eyes of a savage like the stories described. They were the eyes of someone who was suffering, someone who wanted to live. Billy made his choice. He ran back to the creek and cupped his hands to gather water. When he returned, he gently lifted the warrior's head and let the cool water touch his lips. The man drank slowly, gratefully. Next, Billy took off his own shirt and pressed it against the bullet wound to stop the bleeding. The warrior winced but didn't cry out. Billy could tell this was a strong man, someone who had faced pain before. As the minutes passed, Billy began to think more clearly about what he was doing. This wasn't just about helping someone hurt. This was about crossing a line that his people and the Comanche's people had drawn in the sand. White settlers and Native Americans were supposed to be enemies. But sitting there beside the creek, with the wounded warrior slowly getting stronger thanks to his help, Billy began to wonder if those lines were really as solid as everyone believed. The warrior spoke again, this time more clearly. Billy couldn't understand the words, but the meaning was clear. "Thank you." Billy smiled and nodded. Then he realized he had a bigger problem. He couldn't leave this man here to die, but he also couldn't bring him home. His pa would never allow it, and it might put his whole family in danger. He would have to find another way. Billy looked at the warrior again. The man was watching him with curious eyes, as if he was trying to figure out why a white boy would risk his life for a Comanche stranger. Billy was wondering the same thing himself. All he knew was that it felt right. When someone needed help, you helped them. His ma had taught him that before she died, and it was a lesson he carried in his heart. As darkness began to fall, Billy made a promise to himself and to the wounded warrior. He would find a way to help this man get better, no matter what it took. He didn't know yet how much that decision would change both of their lives. The warrior seemed to understand something important was happening. He reached into a small pouch on his belt and pulled out a carved piece of bone hanging on a leather cord. With weak but steady hands, he placed it around Billy's neck. Billy touched the carving. It was smooth and warm, with symbols he didn't recognize but somehow understood meant something important. The warrior looked into Billy's eyes and spoke one word clearly: "Brother." Billy didn't speak Comanche, but some words need no translation. He nodded and spoke back: "Brother." As the first stars appeared in the Texas sky, Billy helped the warrior move to a more hidden spot among the rocks near the creek. Tomorrow he would bring food and medicine. Tonight he would go home and act like nothing had happened. But everything had changed. Billy had crossed that invisible line between his world and the Comanche world. He had chosen to see a human being instead of an enemy, and that choice would lead him on a journey he never could have imagined. The warrior watched Billy walk away into the darkness. In his weakened state, he couldn't know that this young white boy would soon become the bridge between two peoples who had been at war for generations. All he knew was that his life had been saved by someone who had every reason to let him die. Billy walked home slowly, thinking about what he had done and what he planned to do tomorrow. His pa would be angry if he knew. The neighbors would call him crazy. But looking up at the stars, Billy felt something he had never felt before, like he was part of something much bigger than the small world of his family's farm. He touched the bone carving around his neck and quickened his pace. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight he had saved a life. And somehow he knew that life was going to save him right back. Billy barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the wounded warrior's face and remembered the weight of the bone carving around his neck. He had hidden it under his pillow before his pa came to check on him. When morning came, Billy acted like it was any other day. He helped his pa with the morning chores, fed the chickens, and milked their old cow Bessie. But his mind was somewhere else entirely, down by Willow Creek with a man who might not survive another day without help. "You seem jumpy today, son," his pa said during breakfast. "Something bothering you?" Billy's heart skipped a beat. "No, Pa. Just thinking about my chores." His pa studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Well, don't forget to check those water traps again today. And Billy, don't wander too far from the farm. There have been reports of Comanche in the area." Billy nodded, trying to keep his face normal. If only his pa knew how close those reports were to the truth. After his pa left to work the far field, Billy quickly gathered supplies. He took some leftover cornbread from breakfast, wrapped it in cloth, and filled a water jar. From his ma's old medicine box, he grabbed some clean bandages and a small bottle of whiskey that his pa used for cuts and injuries. The walk to Willow Creek felt longer today. Every sound made Billy jump. What if other Comanche had come looking for their missing warrior? What if his pa decided to check the creek area? What if the man had already died during the night? When Billy reached the rocks where he had left the warrior, his heart was pounding. For a terrible moment, he thought the man was gone. Then he heard a low voice speaking in Comanche. Billy crept closer and found the warrior awake and alert. The man looked much better than he had the night before. His eyes were clear and focused, and some color had returned to his face. When the warrior saw Billy, he smiled, the first real smile Billy had ever seen on a Comanche face. It made him look younger, more like someone's big brother than a fierce warrior. Billy offered the water first. The warrior drank slowly, savoring every drop. Then Billy unwrapped the cornbread. The man ate carefully as if he hadn't had food in days. Next came the hard part, changing the bandage on the bullet wound. Billy had helped his ma tend to injuries before she died, so he knew what to do. But he had never worked on someone who couldn't understand his words. Billy pointed to the warrior's shoulder and then to his supplies. The man understood immediately. He lay still while Billy carefully removed the bloody shirt Billy had left as a bandage the night before. The wound looked better. It had stopped bleeding and was starting to close. Billy cleaned it gently with some of the whiskey, which made the warrior wince but not cry out. Then he wrapped it with fresh bandages. While Billy worked, the warrior spoke softly in Comanche. Billy couldn't understand the words, but the tone was grateful and kind. When Billy finished, the warrior touched the boy's hand and said something that sounded like a blessing. Then something amazing happened. The warrior began teaching Billy words in Comanche. He pointed to himself and said, "Swift Eagle." Then he pointed to Billy with questioning eyes. "Billy," the boy said, pointing to himself. Swift Eagle repeated the name several times, then smiled and said it perfectly. "Billy." They spent the next hour teaching each other simple words. Water was Bia. Thank you was Ura. Friend was Tekwap. Billy was a quick learner, and Swift Eagle seemed to enjoy being a teacher. But as the morning grew later, Billy knew he had to get back. His pa would be looking for him soon. Billy gathered his supplies and prepared to leave. Swift Eagle grabbed his arm gently and spoke seriously in a mixture of Comanche and broken English. "Billy, good, Tekwap, Swift. Eagle, remember, Billy," nodded and touched the bone carving around his neck. I'll come back tomorrow." Swift Eagle seemed to understand, even though Billy had spoken in English. The warrior lay back down among the rocks, but he looked much stronger than he had the day before. Billy ran home, his mind spinning with everything that had happened. He was keeping a huge secret from his pa, but he didn't feel guilty about it. He felt excited, like he was part of something important. That afternoon, Billy's pa came home with news that made Billy's stomach twist into knots. Old Henderson from the next farm over says he found tracks near his property. His pa announced. Comanche tracks. Fresh ones. We need to be extra careful. Billy tried to act surprised. How many? Hard to say. Could be scouts looking for a good place to raid. Or could be a hunting party. Either way, I don't want you wandering far from the house. That evening, Billy lay in bed thinking about Swift Eagle. Was he one of the scouts Henderson had seen? Was he part of a larger group? Billy realized he knew almost nothing about the man he was helping, but when he touched the bone carving under his nightshirt, he remembered the gratitude in Swift Eagle's eyes. Whatever else was true, Billy was helping someone who needed help. That had to be right. The next morning brought new challenges. Billy's pa decided to work closer to home, which meant Billy had less freedom to move around. He had to wait until afternoon to visit Swift Eagle, and even then he could only stay for a short time. Swift Eagle looked even better. He was sitting up and had moved to a better hiding spot deeper in the rocks. When he saw Billy, he stood up, slowly, but under his own power. "Billy," he said with a big smile. "Tequap," Billy grinned back. Swift Eagle. Tequap. They shared the food Billy had brought and continued their language lessons. Swift Eagle taught Billy how to say brave in Comanche. Piakura. Then he pointed to Billy and said, "Piakura, Billy." Billy felt his cheeks get warm. He had never thought of himself as brave. He was just doing what felt right. Swift Eagle seemed to sense Billy's thoughts. He spoke carefully in broken English. "Billy, help. When danger. That piakura." Billy understood. Helping someone when it could get you in trouble. That was courage. He had never thought about it that way before. As days passed, Billy developed a routine. Every morning and evening he would find excuses to go near the creek. He brought food, fresh water, and clean bandages. Swift Eagle grew stronger each day, but Billy also grew more nervous. His pa was asking more questions about where Billy spent his time. The neighbors were talking more about Comanche in the area, and Billy was running out of medical supplies and food he could take without being noticed. One evening, as Billy prepared to leave Swift Eagle for the night, the warrior grabbed his arm. "Billy," Swift Eagle said seriously. "Soon I go. My people," worry Billy's heart sank. He had known this day would come, but he wasn't ready for it. Swift Eagle had become more than just someone he was helping. He had become a friend when, Billy asked. Swift Eagle held up 3 fingers. 3 sons, 3 days. Billy nodded, but inside he felt sad. Once Swift Eagle left, would Billy ever see him again? Would the warrior remember the white boy who had helped him? Swift Eagle seemed to read Billy's thoughts. He pulled out a small knife with a carved handle. "For Billy," he said. "Tequap, always." Billy accepted the gift with both hands. It was beautiful and obviously very valuable. "Thank you, Swift Eagle." Swift Eagle smiled and said something long in Comanche. Billy didn't understand all the words, but he caught a few. Brother, remember, and return. As Billy walked home that night, he felt like something important was ending. But he also had a strange feeling that something even more important was just beginning. The bone carving around his neck seemed to grow warmer as he walked. Billy touched it and thought about Swift Eagle's promise to remember. In 3 days, his new friend would be gone. Billy had no way of knowing that Swift Eagle was planning something that would change both of their lives forever. Billy woke up on the 3rd day with a heavy feeling in his chest. Today, Swift Eagle would leave. Their secret friendship, which had grown stronger each day, would come to an end. Billy dressed slowly, dreading what felt like saying goodbye to a brother. At breakfast, his pa seemed distracted and worried. "Billy, I need you to stay close to the house today." "Real close. Why, Pa?" "Henderson found more tracks yesterday. Fresh ones, right near our property line. I'm starting to think we might have a Comanche camp somewhere nearby." Billy tried to keep his face calm, but inside his heart was racing. "What are you going to do?" "Me and some of the other men are going to scout the area this afternoon. Make sure our families are safe." Billy's blood ran cold. If his pa and the neighbors went looking for Comanche, they might find Swift Eagle. His friend was stronger now, but not strong enough to outrun a group of armed men on horseback. Billy had to warn him. After his pa left for the morning, Billy grabbed some food and water and ran toward Willow Creek faster than he had ever run before. He had to get to Swift Eagle before his pa's search party started looking around. When Billy reached the rocks, Swift Eagle was already preparing to leave. His few belongings were packed, and he looked much more like the warrior Billy had first found. Strong, alert, and ready for anything. "Swift Eagle," Billy called out as he approached. The warrior turned and smiled. "Billy Tequap, I go soon." "No, you have to go now," Billy said urgently. "My pa and other men are coming to look for Comanche. Today, this afternoon." Swift Eagle understood immediately. His expression became serious and focused. "How many men?" Billy held up both hands. 10, maybe more, with guns and horses." Swift Eagle nodded and quickly finished packing his things. But instead of seeming scared, he looked thoughtful. "Billy," he said carefully, "your people, they find me. They hurt you too?" Billy hadn't really thought about that. But now that Swift Eagle mentioned it, he realized his pa would be furious if he found out what Billy had been doing. "Maybe," Swift Eagle frowned. "That not good. You help me. You say family. You good boy." Billy felt tears starting in his eyes. He didn't want Swift Eagle to go, and he was scared about what would happen when his pa found out about their friendship. Swift Eagle saw Billy's distress and put a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. "Billy, you saved my life. Now I save yours. We Tequaps forever." Billy nodded, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "I'm going to miss you, Swift Eagle, and I miss Billy, but this not goodbye forever. Someday we meet again." Swift Eagle shouldered his pack and started to move toward deeper cover in the rocks, but then both of them heard something that made their blood freeze. The sound of horses approaching fast. Billy's pa and his men had started their search early. "Hide," Billy whispered urgently to Swift Eagle, but it was too late. Through the rocks, they could see riders approaching the creek. Billy recognized his pa's horse in the lead. Swift Eagle quickly pulled Billy behind a large boulder. "Stay quiet," he whispered. They could hear the men talking as they got closer. "Tracks definitely lead this way," one man was saying. "Could be more than one of them," Billy's pa replied. "Everyone stay alert." Billy's heart was pounding so hard he was sure everyone could hear it. What would happen if they were found? His pa would be angry and scared. The other men might want to hurt Swift Eagle, even though he had done nothing wrong. Swift Eagle seemed to be thinking the same thing. He looked at Billy with sad but determined eyes. "Billy, when I run, you stay here. Count to 100, then go to your pa." "No," Billy whispered back. "They'll catch you." "You're not strong enough yet," Swift Eagle smiled. "I stronger than you think. And I fast runner." The voices were getting closer now. Billy could hear his pa saying they should check the rocks near the water. "Billy," Swift Eagle whispered, "remember what I teach you. Remember we Tequaps. Remember Swift Eagle." Before Billy could say anything else, Swift Eagle squeezed the boy's shoulder and suddenly stood up. "Hey," one of the men shouted. "There's one." Swift Eagle looked back at Billy one more time, touched the spot where his bone carving would be, and then took off running. Billy had never seen anyone move so fast. Despite his recent injury, Swift Eagle ran like the wind itself, leaping over rocks and dodging between trees. The men on horses tried to follow, but Swift Eagle knew the land better than they did. "He's getting away," someone yelled. "After him," Billy's pa shouted. Billy stayed hidden behind the boulder, counting like Swift Eagle had told him to do. But he was also watching his friend escape. Swift Eagle ran with purpose and grace like he had done this many times before. Just before he disappeared into the thick trees, he turned and looked back toward Billy's hiding spot. Even from that distance, Billy could see Swift Eagle smile. Billy counted to 100, then stood up slowly. He pretended to be just arriving at the creek and called out to his pa. "Pa, what's happening?" His pa rode back toward him, looking frustrated and angry. "Billy, what are you doing here?" "I told you to stay near the house." "I heard horses and shouting," Billy said, which was true. "I got worried about you." His pa's expression softened a little. "We found a Comanche brave hiding in these rocks. He got away, but at least we know where they've been camping." Billy looked around the rocks where Swift Eagle had been hiding. Was he alone? Seems like it. Probably a scout. But where there's one, there might be more. His pa dismounted and put his arm around Billy's shoulders. That's why I need you to be more careful, son. These people are dangerous, Billy nodded. But inside he was thinking about Swift Eagle's gentle hands cleaning Billy's cuts, and his patient voice teaching Billy Comanche words, and his grateful smile when Billy brought him food and water. Dangerous. Swift Eagle was the kindest person Billy had ever met. That evening, Billy's pa and the other men talked about what to do next. They decided to keep a closer watch on their families and properties. They also agreed to be more careful about letting children wander alone. Billy listened to their plans and felt sad. His pa was a good man, but he didn't understand that not all Comanche were enemies. Billy wished he could tell his pa about Swift Eagle, about their friendship, about the lessons in courage and kindness he had learned. But he knew his pa wasn't ready to hear that story yet. That night, Billy lay in bed holding the knife Swift Eagle had given him. He thought about his friend running through the forest, probably making his way back to his own people. He wondered if Swift Eagle would tell anyone about the white boy who had helped him. Billy touched the bone carving around his neck and made a promise to himself. Someday, when he was older and braver, he would find a way to see Swift Eagle again. He would find a way to bridge the gap between their two peoples. He had no idea that Swift Eagle was making the exact same promise as he ran through the Texas night toward home. The seeds of something extraordinary had been planted during their few days together. Billy had risked everything to save a stranger's life, and Swift Eagle had risked everything to protect Billy in return. Their friendship had lasted only a week, but its effects would last a lifetime. As Billy drifted off to sleep, he thought he heard something in the wind outside his window. It sounded almost like a voice calling his name, thanking him, promising to remember. But it might have just been the wind, or it might have been something more. 3 months passed without any sign of Swift Eagle. Billy went to Willow Creek every few days, hoping to find some trace of his friend. But the rocks where they had spent those precious days together remained empty and silent. Billy's life had returned to normal on the outside, but inside, everything was different. He found himself thinking in the Comanche word Swift Eagle had taught him. When he saw birds flying overhead, he whispered huya instead of bird. When he drank water, he remembered bia. The knife Swift Eagle had given him stayed hidden in his room, wrapped carefully in an old shirt. His PA noticed the changes in Billy but didn't understand what they meant. "You've been quieter lately, son," his pa said one evening as they sat on the porch. "Missing your ma more than usual?" Billy nodded. He did miss his ma, but that wasn't why he seemed different. He was missing Swift Eagle, missing the excitement of having a secret friend, missing the feeling that he was part of something bigger than their small farm. "Sometimes I wonder if we should have stayed back east," his pa continued. "This frontier life is hard on a boy. Hard on a family." Billy looked at his pa with surprise. "You want to leave Texas?" His pa sighed. "I think about it sometimes, especially when there's trouble with the Comanche. Maybe it would be safer to go back to a place where we know who our neighbors are." The thought of leaving Texas made Billy's stomach hurt. If they moved away, he would never see Swift Eagle again. "But Pa, this is our home now." "Home is where your family is safe, Billy. And lately I'm not sure how safe we are here." Billy wanted to tell his pa that not all Comanche were dangerous, that some of them were kind and grateful and brave, but he knew his pa wouldn't understand. Not yet. Fall turned to winter, and Billy's family faced new problems. Their crops hadn't grown well that year because of too little rain. The corn they had stored wasn't going to last through the cold months. Other families in the area were struggling too. Billy's pa took on extra work, traveling to nearby towns to find odd jobs that would bring in money for food. Sometimes he was gone for days at a time, leaving Billy alone on the farm. During those lonely days, Billy found himself talking to Swift Eagle as if his friend were still there. He would sit by Willow Creek and tell stories about his day, using the mix of English and Comanche words that had become natural to him. "The corn is all gone now, Swift Eagle," he said to the empty rocks one cold afternoon. "Pa's worried we won't have enough food for winter. I wish you were here. I wish I knew if you made it back to your people safely." The wind rustled through the bare trees, but there was no answer. Winter arrived early and harsh. Snow fell deeper than anyone had seen in years. Billy's pa came home from his latest trip to town with bad news and worry lines around his eyes. "There's no work to be found anywhere," he told Billy. "And the supplies in town are running low too. Everyone's struggling this winter. Billy looked at their nearly empty pantry and felt scared in a way he had never felt before. They had maybe 2 weeks of food left and winter was only getting started. That night, Billy lay in bed listening to his pa pacing the floor downstairs. He could hear his pa talking to himself, trying to figure out how to keep them alive until spring. Billy touched Swift Eagle's knife under his pillow and wondered if his friend was warm and safe somewhere. He wondered if Comanche families ever went hungry in the winter. He wondered if Swift Eagle ever thought about the white boy who had helped him. As the days grew colder and their food supplies got smaller, Billy's pa began talking seriously about abandoning the farm. "We could go back to my brother's place in Missouri," he said one morning as they ate their small breakfast. "At least there we'd have family to help us." Billy's heart sank. What about our farm? What about Ma's grave? His pa looked out the window at the snow-covered land. "Your ma would want us to survive, Billy. She wouldn't want us to starve trying to hold on to a piece of land." Billy understood his pa's logic, but the thought of leaving felt like giving up on everything that mattered. This was where he had met Swift Eagle. This was where he had learned that people who seemed different could become friends. This was where he had become brave. "How long do we have to decide?" Billy asked. "If the weather doesn't break soon, we'll have to leave before the next big storm. Maybe a week or 2. Billy nodded, but inside he was making his own plans. He wouldn't let his family starve, and he wouldn't let them give up on their home. Somehow he had to find a way to help them make it through the winter. That afternoon, while his pa was chopping firewood, Billy went to Willow Creek one more time. The rocks where Swift Eagle had hidden were covered with snow, but Billy brushed them off and sat down anyway. "Swift Eagle," he said out loud, "I need help. My family is in trouble and I don't know what to do. I wish you could tell me what a brave person would do right now." The wind was howling through the trees, making an almost musical sound. Billy closed his eyes and listened, pretending it was Swift Eagle's voice giving him advice. "Be patient," the wind seemed to say. "Be brave. Help will come when you need it most." Billy opened his eyes and looked around. Nothing had changed. The rocks were still covered with snow and the creek was frozen solid. But somehow Billy felt a little better. He stood up and touched the bone carving around his neck. "I won't give up, Swift Eagle. I'll be brave like you taught me." As Billy walked home through the snow, he didn't notice the tracks that led away from Willow Creek toward the distant hills. They were mostly covered by fresh snowfall, but if he had looked carefully, he might have seen that someone had been watching him from the forest. Someone who recognized the way he moved, the way he spoke to the empty rocks, the way he touched something around his neck. Someone who had been keeping track of the white boy and his family all winter long, someone who was about to repay a debt that had been growing in his heart for months. Billy went to bed that night not knowing that help was already on its way. Not knowing that his act of kindness was about to save his family, just like it had saved Swift Eagle's life. Not knowing that some friendships are stronger than time, distance, or the barriers that divide different peoples. But he would find out soon enough. Very soon. Billy woke up to his pa shaking his shoulder gently. Outside, the wind was howling like a wild animal and snow was falling so hard they couldn't see past the front porch. "Worst storm we've had all winter," his pa said quietly. "We need to talk, son." Billy sat up in bed, already knowing what was coming. They had been eating smaller meals for weeks now, and yesterday they had finished the last of their stored potatoes. "We can't wait any longer," his pa continued. "Tomorrow, when the storm clears, we're packing up and heading to Missouri." "I'm sorry, Billy, I know this isn't what you wanted." Billy nodded, trying not to cry. At 14, he was almost a man, and men didn't cry about things they couldn't change. But inside his heart was breaking. They were giving up on their home, giving up on his ma's resting place, giving up on the land where he had learned what friendship really meant. "I understand, Pa," Billy said. His pa squeezed his shoulder. "You're a good boy, Billy. Your ma would be proud of how brave you've been this winter." After his pa left the room, Billy lay back down and listened to the storm outside. The wind sounded angry, like it was fighting against something. Billy pulled his blanket up to his chin and tried to imagine what Missouri would be like. Would he make friends there? Would he ever have another adventure like the one with Swift Eagle? He was still thinking about these things when he heard something strange. At first he thought it was just the wind making odd sounds, but then he heard it again, a voice calling from outside. Billy got up and looked out his frosted window. Through the swirling snow, he could barely make out shapes moving near their front yard. Dark shapes that looked like people. His heart started beating faster. Who would be out in a storm like this? Billy heard his pa moving around downstairs. Probably because he had heard the voices too. Billy quickly got dressed and crept to the top of the stairs to listen. His pa was at the front door with his rifle calling out, "Who's there?" "What do you want?" A voice answered through the wind, speaking in accented but clear English. "We come in peace. We have food for Billy's family." Billy's breath caught in his throat. Someone outside knew his name. His pa was quiet for a long moment. Then Billy heard him ask, "How do you know my son's name?" "Billy saved my life." "I bring gift to repay debt." Billy couldn't believe what he was hearing. He ran down the stairs, not caring about being quiet anymore. "Pa, let me see." His pa looked at him with confused eyes. "Billy, do you know what this is about?" Before Billy could answer, the voice outside called again. "Billy Tekwap." "It is Swift Eagle." Billy's heart nearly stopped. He pushed past his pa and opened the door wide. There, standing in the middle of the worst snowstorm in years, were 5 Comanche warriors. They were wrapped in thick buffalo robes and had snow in their hair. But Billy recognized the tallest one immediately. Swift Eagle looked exactly the same as he had 9 months ago, except now he was wearing the markings of a war chief. His eyes found Billy's immediately, and his familiar smile spread across his face. "Billy, my Tekwap," Swift Eagle said warmly. "You look taller." Billy couldn't speak. He just stared at his friend, unable to believe Swift Eagle was really there. Billy's pa still had his rifle ready, but he wasn't pointing it at anyone. He was looking back and forth between Billy and Swift Eagle, trying to understand what was happening. "Billy," his pa said carefully. "Do you know this man?" Billy found his voice. "Pa, this is Swift Eagle. He's my friend." His pa's eyes went wide. "Your friend?" Swift Eagle stepped forward slowly, his hands visible and empty. "Sir, your son saved my life last summer. I was dying. Billy risked everything to help me get better. Now your family has trouble. I come to help." Billy's pa looked at Billy with a mixture of confusion and something that might have been pride. "Is this true, son?" Billy nodded. "I found him hurt by Willow Creek. I couldn't just let him die, Pa." Swift Eagle gestured to the other warriors with him. They were carrying large packs and leading horses loaded with supplies. "We bring meat," Swift Eagle said, "and corn, and warm blankets, enough for whole winter." Billy's pa stared at the supplies, then at Swift Eagle, then at Billy. "You did this? You helped him when he was hurt?" Billy nodded again. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you, Pa. I was scared you'd be angry." His pa was quiet for a long moment. The snow kept falling around them and the wind kept howling, but somehow the moment felt peaceful. Finally, Billy's pa lowered his rifle completely. "Well," he said slowly, "I guess we'd better invite them in out of this storm." Swift Eagle smiled and said something in Comanche to his companions. They began unloading supplies from their horses. "We not stay in house," Swift Eagle said to Billy's pa. "We make camp nearby. But first we bring food inside where it stay warm." Billy watched in amazement as the warriors brought bag after bag of supplies into their house. There was dried meat, corn, beans, flour, and even some sugar. There were thick blankets made from buffalo hide, and warm clothes made from soft leather. More than enough food to last the rest of the winter. More than enough to keep them from having to leave their home. While the other warriors worked, Swift Eagle pulled Billy aside. "Billy," he said quietly, "I watch your family this winter. I see you have trouble. I know your people think about leaving." Billy's eyes went wide. "You've been watching us?" Swift Eagle nodded. "I promise to keep you safe. Comanche always keep promises to friends." Billy felt tears in his eyes again, but this time they were happy tears. "I thought I'd never see you again." "Tekwaps always find each other," Swift Eagle said. "And now I have something to ask you." Billy waited. "My people want to meet Billy who saved Swift Eagle's life. They want to give you honor. Will you come to our winter camp?" Billy looked over at his pa, who was talking with one of the other Comanche warriors. The conversation looked friendly, even though his pa still seemed confused by everything. "I don't know if my pa will let me," Billy said. Swift Eagle nodded. "We ask him together. But first we make sure your family has everything they need." The rest of the evening was like a dream. Billy's pa and Swift Eagle sat by the fire and talked, with Billy translating when needed. Billy learned that Swift Eagle had become a respected leader among his people, and that he had told them many times about the brave white boy who had risked everything to save a stranger's life. Billy also learned that Swift Eagle and his warriors had been keeping watch over Billy's family all winter, making sure they were safe but waiting for the right time to approach. "Why now?" Billy's pa asked. Swift Eagle looked at Billy with serious eyes. "Because Billy's family ready to leave, and Swift Eagle not let that happen. Billy belong here. This is home." Billy's pa studied Swift Eagle's face for a long moment. Then he looked at Billy. "You really saved his life?" Billy nodded. "He was going to die, Pa. I couldn't just walk away." His pa was quiet for another moment. Then he reached over and put his hand on Billy's shoulder. "Your ma always said you had a big heart." "I guess she was right." Swift Eagle smiled. "Billy have biggest heart of anyone I know. That why my people want to meet him. That why we want to give him honor." Billy's pa looked at Swift Eagle. "What kind of honor?" Swift Eagle's smile got even bigger. "We want to make Billy part of Comanche family. We want to make him our brother." Billy's heart nearly exploded with happiness. Swift Eagle wanted him to become part of the Comanche family? It was more than he had ever dared to hope for. His pa looked worried, though. "That sounds dangerous." Swift Eagle shook his head. "Not dangerous, special. Billy earned this honor. And Comanche family protect Billy forever." Billy looked at his pa with pleading eyes. "Can I go, Pa, please?" His pa studied both of them for a long time. Outside, the storm was starting to calm down. Inside, the fire was warm and their house was full of food that would keep them alive until spring. Finally, his pa smiled. "I reckon if you're old enough to save a man's life, you're old enough to accept the consequences of that kindness." Billy grinned so wide his face hurt. Swift Eagle clapped his hands together once, a sound of celebration. "We go tomorrow," Swift Eagle said. After storm finished, Billy nodded eagerly. Tomorrow, he would begin the next part of his adventure. Tomorrow, he would meet Swift Eagle's people and learn what it meant to be part of a Comanche family. Tonight, he would sleep peacefully for the first time in months, knowing that his family was safe and his friend had kept his promise. Some friendships, Billy realized, really were forever. The morning after the storm was crystal clear and bright. The snow had stopped falling and everything looked clean and new. Billy woke up early, more excited than he had ever been in his life. Today he was going to visit a Comanche camp. Today he was going to meet Swift Eagle's people and see how they lived. Today his real adventure would begin. Billy's pa was already up, drinking coffee and talking quietly with Swift Eagle by the fire. When Billy came downstairs, both men looked at him seriously. "Sit down, son," his pa said. "Swift Eagle and I need to talk with you before you go anywhere." Billy sat down, suddenly nervous. Had his pa changed his mind? Swift Eagle leaned forward. "Billy, my people good people. But they different from your people. They have different ways, different ideas about many things." Billy nodded. "I understand." His pa cleared his throat. "What Swift Eagle is trying to say is that you need to be respectful and careful. These aren't our people, Billy. They have their own laws and customs." "But they want to honor me," Billy protested. Swift Eagle said so. Swift Eagle smiled. "Yes, they want to honor you. But honor among Comanche people is a serious thing. It means something important. You ready for that?" Billy thought about this. What does it mean exactly? Swift Eagle and Billy's pa exchanged a look. Then Swift Eagle spoke carefully. "When Comanche people make someone family, it forever. It mean you have duties to tribe and tribe has duties to you. It mean you part of something bigger than yourself." Billy's pa added, "It also means you'll see things that might seem strange or scary to you. The Comanche way of life is very different from ours." Billy looked back and forth between the two men. They were both worried about him, he could tell, but they were worried about different things. "Swift Eagle," Billy said, "do you think I'm ready for this?" Swift Eagle studied Billy's face for a long moment. "I think you're ready for many things, Tequap. But you must decide for yourself. No one can make this choice for you." Billy thought about everything that had happened over the past year. He thought about finding Swift Eagle dying by the creek, about the risk he had taken to save his friend's life, about the months of wondering if he would ever see Swift Eagle again. He thought about how good it felt to have a friend from a completely different world, and how much he had learned from their brief time together. "I want to go," Billy said firmly. "I want to meet your people and learn about your ways." Swift Eagle's smile was like sunshine. "Then we go today." Billy's pa still looked worried, but he nodded. "How long will you be gone?" 3 days, Swift Eagle said. "Maybe 4. Depend on how long ceremony take." Billy packed a small bag with extra clothes and the few special things he owned, including the knife Swift Eagle had given him and the bone carving he wore around his neck. His pa gave him some advice about being polite and keeping his eyes open. "Remember," his pa said as they stood on the porch, "you're representing our family and our people. Be respectful, be honest, and come home safe." Billy hugged his pa tight. "I will, Pa. I promise." Swift Eagle and his warriors had prepared a horse for Billy to ride. It was a beautiful paint horse with brown and white spots, and it seemed gentle and smart. "This is Spotted Wind," Swift Eagle said as he helped Billy mount the horse. "She good horse for young rider." As they rode away from the farm, Billy looked back and waved to his pa. His pa waved back, and Billy could see both pride and worry in his father's face. The journey to Swift Eagle's camp took most of the day. They rode through forests and across open plains that Billy had never seen before. Swift Eagle told him stories as they traveled, teaching him more Comanche words and explaining things about the land they were crossing. "This creek," Swift Eagle said as they stopped to rest the horses, "this where my grandfather caught his first fish. And that hill there, that where my grandmother picked berries every summer." Billy realized that Swift Eagle and his people knew this land in a way that Billy's family never had. To Billy's people, it was just empty space to be claimed and farmed. To Swift Eagle's people, it was full of memories and meaning. "How long have the Comanche lived here?" Billy asked. Swift Eagle thought about this. "My people move with seasons, follow buffalo, follow good hunting. But this land, we know this land for many, many generations," Billy understood. This wasn't just where the Comanche happened to live right now. This was their home in a deeper way than Billy had ever thought about. As the sun started to get lower in the sky, they crested a hill and Billy saw the Comanche camp spread out in the valley below. It was nothing like what Billy had expected. Instead of the wild, dangerous place he had imagined, Billy saw a peaceful village of beautiful teepees arranged in careful circles. Smoke was rising from cooking fires and he could hear children laughing and playing. People were moving around doing daily tasks. Women working with hides, men caring for horses, elders sitting in the sun and talking. It looked like home. Different from Billy's home, but definitely a place where families lived and loved and took care of each other. "Your people live in teepees?" Billy asked. Swift Eagle nodded. "Teepee good for people who move often. Quick to put up, quick to take down, and warm in winter, cool in summer." As they rode down into the camp, people began to notice them. Billy saw heads turning and voices calling out. He couldn't understand the words, but he could tell people were excited about something. Swift Eagle called back to them in Comanche, and Billy caught a few words he recognized. Billy, Tequap, and Piakura. Brave. Children started running alongside their horses, looking up at Billy with curious and friendly faces. Some of them waved, and Billy waved back, which made them giggle and chatter excitedly. Women stopped their work to watch them pass. Men nodded respectfully to Swift Eagle and looked at Billy with interest. Everyone seemed happy to see them, but Billy could tell they were especially curious about him. Swift Eagle led them to the center of the camp, where a group of older men were sitting around a fire. These men had the bearing of leaders. They sat straight and watched everything with sharp, intelligent eyes. "Council of Elders," Swift Eagle explained quietly to Billy. "Very important men. They decide about honor ceremony." Billy felt nervous for the first time since they had left his farm. What if these important men didn't think he deserved to be honored? What if they decided he wasn't worthy of being made part of their family? Swift Eagle dismounted and helped Billy down from Spotted Wind. Then he led Billy toward the circle of elders. The oldest man in the group stood up. He was tall and dignified, with long gray hair and deep lines around his eyes that spoke of many years of wisdom. He looked at Billy carefully, studying his face and his posture. Then he spoke to Swift Eagle in Comanche. Billy caught only a few words, but he heard his name mentioned several times. Swift Eagle answered, also in Comanche, and Billy heard the story of how they had met and how Billy had saved Swift Eagle's life. The elders listened carefully, asking questions and nodding at important parts. Finally, the old man turned to Billy and spoke in slow, careful English. "Young Billy," he said, "Swift Eagle tell us you save his life when you have every reason to let him die." "Is this true?" Billy swallowed hard. "Yes, sir, but I didn't think about reasons. I just saw someone who needed help." The old man's eyes crinkled, and Billy thought he might be trying not to smile. "You not think about reasons?" Billy shook his head. "No, sir. I just thought about what my ma taught me, that when someone needs help, you help them. This time the old man did smile. He said something in Comanche to the other elders, and they all nodded approvingly. Your mother teach you well, the old man said to Billy. She teach you to see person, not enemy. Billy felt a warm feeling in his chest. Thank you, sir. The old man stepped closer to Billy and put a gentle hand on his shoulder. I am Chief Gray Wolf, and tomorrow we make you part of our family forever. Billy looked at Swift Eagle, who was grinning from ear to ear. What happens tomorrow? Billy asked. Chief Gray Wolf's smile got even bigger. Tomorrow Billy become Comanche brother. Tomorrow you get new name and new family. Tomorrow your real adventure begin. Billy woke up before dawn on the day of the ceremony. He had spent the night in Swift Eagle's teepee, sleeping on soft buffalo robes and listening to the sounds of the camp settling down for the night. It had been the most comfortable bed he had ever slept in, but he was too excited to sleep deeply. Swift Eagle was already awake, sitting by a small fire and preparing something that smelled like sage and sweetgrass. Today is important day, Billy, Swift Eagle said softly. You ready? Billy sat up and nodded, though inside he felt nervous and excited all at the same time. What exactly is going to happen? Swift Eagle smiled and handed Billy a cup of warm tea made from herbs Billy didn't recognize. It tasted earthy and comforting. First, you meet with women of tribe. They prepare you for ceremony. Then, elders speak to whole tribe about what you did for me. Then you become my brother in eyes of all Comanche people. Billy sipped his tea and thought about this. Will it hurt? Swift Eagle laughed. Not hurt your body, but it change your spirit. After today, you not just Billy who live on farm. You Billy who belong to Comanche Nation. Before Billy could ask more questions, an elderly woman appeared at the entrance to the teepee. She spoke to Swift Eagle in Comanche, and he nodded respectfully. This is Grandmother Moon, Swift Eagle told Billy. She most respected woman in tribe. She prepare you for ceremony. Grandmother Moon looked at Billy with kind but serious eyes. She was small and bent with age, but there was something powerful about her that made Billy want to sit up straighter. She spoke to Billy in English that was better than most of the other Comanche he had met. Come, young one. We have much to do before sun reaches high point. Billy followed Grandmother Moon out of the teepee and through the camp. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky pink and gold. Most people were still sleeping, but Billy could see smoke rising from a few cooking fires. Grandmother Moon led him to a teepee that was larger than the others and decorated with beautiful paintings of eagles and buffalo. Inside, several women were waiting. They smiled at Billy warmly, but didn't speak. These women help prepare you, Grandmother Moon explained. They make you ready to join Comanche family. Billy felt nervous again. What do they need to do? First, we wash away your old life. Then we paint you with symbols of courage and brotherhood. Then we dress you in clothes fitting for new Comanche sun. The preparation took most of the morning. The women were gentle and careful, treating Billy like he was someone very special. They washed his hair with soap that smelled like pine trees and braided it with small feathers and beads. They painted his face with red and white designs that Grandmother Moon explained meant brave heart and bridge between peoples. The clothes they gave him were made from soft deerskin and decorated with intricate beadwork. The shirt fit perfectly, and the pants were more comfortable than anything Billy had ever worn. They gave him moccasins that felt like walking on clouds. When they were finished, Grandmother Moon held up a piece of polished metal so Billy could see his reflection. He barely recognized himself. He looked like a young Comanche warrior, but his blue eyes still marked him as someone from a different world. You look like son any Comanche mother would be proud of, Grandmother Moon said with satisfaction. As the sun reached its highest point, Billy heard drums beginning to beat outside. The sound was deep and rhythmic, like a giant heartbeat. His own heart started beating faster. Time for ceremony, Grandmother Moon said. You ready? Billy nodded, though he wasn't sure he felt ready at all. Grandmother Moon led him outside, and Billy gasped at what he saw. The entire tribe had gathered in a huge circle around a central fire. Men, women, children, and elders. Everyone was there, all dressed in their finest clothes and jewelry. Swift Eagle was waiting for him near the fire, also dressed in ceremonial clothes. He looked magnificent, like the great warrior and leader he had become. When he saw Billy, his face lit up with pride. Chief Gray Wolf stood in the center of the circle, holding a long staff decorated with feathers and animal fur. He began speaking in Comanche, his voice carrying clearly across the gathering. Swift Eagle moved to Billy's side and whispered translations. He telling story of how we met. He telling about Billy's courage and kindness. Billy listened as Chief Gray Wolf told the tribe about finding Swift Eagle wounded by the creek, about the risk Billy had taken to help a stranger, about the friendship that had grown between them despite their different backgrounds. The crowd murmured approvingly at various parts of the story. Billy could see people nodding and smiling at him. Some of the women had tears in their eyes. When Chief Gray Wolf finished the story, he called Billy forward. Billy walked slowly to the center of the circle, feeling hundreds of pairs of eyes watching him. Chief Gray Wolf placed his hands on Billy's shoulders and spoke directly to him in English so everyone could understand. Billy, you show us that courage has no color, kindness has no tribe, and friendship has no boundaries. You risk everything to save life of someone your people call enemy. You choose to see brother instead of stranger. Billy felt tears starting in his eyes. He had never heard anyone describe his actions in such important words. Chief Gray Wolf continued, Today, we make you part of Comanche Nation. Today, you become son, brother, and warrior. Today, you receive name that will be yours forever. The chief turned to face the crowd and spoke in Comanche. Billy heard Swift Eagle translate, From this day forward, this boy shall be known as Brave Heart Who Heals. He is son of our nation, brother to all warriors, protector of those who need protection. The crowd erupted in celebration. People were cheering and singing, and the drums got louder and more exciting. Billy felt overwhelmed by the joy and acceptance he saw in every face. But the ceremony wasn't over yet. Chief Gray Wolf called Swift Eagle forward and spoke to both of them together. Swift Eagle, you accept this boy as your true brother? I do, Swift Eagle said firmly. Billy is brother of my heart. Billy, you accept Swift Eagle as your true brother and the Comanche Nation as your true family? Billy's voice was strong and clear. I do. Chief Gray Wolf raised his staff high in the air. Then let all spirits witness, these two are brothers and Billy is son of the Comanche people. The celebration that followed was unlike anything Billy had ever experienced. There was dancing and singing, storytelling and feasting. People came up to Billy all day long to welcome him to the family and to thank him for saving Swift Eagle's life. An old warrior named Running Bear told Billy through an interpreter, You show us that there are good people in all tribes. You give us hope for peace between our peoples. A young mother let Billy hold her baby and said, Someday I tell my son about brave heart who heals, about boy who choose love over fear. As the sun began to set, Swift Eagle took Billy aside for a private conversation. How you feel, brother? Swift Eagle asked. Billy thought about it carefully. I feel like I belong somewhere bigger than just my pa's farm. I feel like I have a family that stretches further than I can see. Swift Eagle nodded. That exactly right. Now you have Comanche family all across the plains. Wherever you go, if you meet Comanche people, they will know you as Braveheart Who Heals. They will treat you as son and brother. Billy touched the bone carving around his neck, which he was still wearing under his new Comanche shirt. How many people is that? Swift Eagle thought for a moment, then grinned. Maybe 200 warriors, maybe more. All connected to this tribe, all connected to you now. Billy's eyes went wide. 200 warriors consider me family. 200 warriors and their families and their friends, Swift Eagle confirmed. You save one life, but that life connected to many others. Now you connected to all of them. Billy felt dizzy thinking about it. One act of kindness by a creek had led to this, to having a family that spanned tribes and territories, to being welcomed as a brother by people he had never met. That night, as Billy lay on his buffalo robes in Swift Eagle's teepee, he thought about the ceremony and what it meant. He was still Billy, son of a Texas farmer. But now he was also Braveheart Who Heals, son of the Comanche Nation. He thought about his pa, waiting for him back at the farm. He thought about his ma, who had taught him to help people who needed help. He wondered what they would think of their son becoming part of a Comanche family. Swift Eagle seemed to read his thoughts. "You worried about your pa?" Billy nodded. "Do you think he'll understand?" Swift Eagle was quiet for a moment. "Your pa is good, man. He let you come here even though he was scared. That show he trusts you, and he trusts me. When you go home and tell him about ceremony, he will be proud." Billy hoped Swift Eagle was right. He hoped his pa would see this as an honor instead of something dangerous or strange. As Billy drifted off to sleep, he could hear the sounds of the camp settling down for the night. Children were laughing. Adults were talking quietly around their fires, and somewhere in the distance, someone was singing a lullaby in Comanche. It sounded like home. Different from his other home, but definitely a place where he belonged. Tomorrow he would begin the journey back to his pa's farm, but he would never again be just an ordinary boy living on the Texas frontier. He was brave. Heart who heals, son of two worlds, bridge between peoples who had been enemies, and his real adventure was just beginning. Billy rode home from the Comanche camp with his heart full of new memories, and his mind spinning with everything that had happened. Swift Eagle and two other warriors escorted him back to his family's farm, carrying gifts from the tribe. Beautiful blankets, decorated weapons, and a message of friendship for Billy's pa. When they crested the hill and saw the familiar farmhouse in the distance, Billy felt a strange mix of emotions. He was excited to see his pa and tell him about the ceremony, but he also felt different now. He wasn't just the farm boy who had left 3 days ago. He was Braveheart who heals, adopted son of the Comanche nation. Billy's pa was waiting on the porch, probably watching for them since dawn. When he saw the riders approaching, he stood up and shaded his eyes with his hand. Billy waved enthusiastically. "Pa, I'm back." His pa waved back, and Billy could see the relief on his face even from a distance. When they reached the farmyard, Billy dismounted from Spotted Wind and ran to hug his pa. His pa held him tight, and Billy could feel how worried he had been. "You look different," his pa said, studying Billy's face. "Older somehow," Billy grinned. "I feel different too, Pa. I have so much to tell you." Swift Eagle approached them respectfully. "Sir, your son bring great honor to both our peoples. The Comanche nation proud to call Billy our son." Billy's pa looked at Swift Eagle with new understanding. "He's really part of your family now?" Swift Eagle nodded seriously. "Forever. Billy is Braveheart who heals now. He have protection and love of Comanche people wherever he go." Billy's pa was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Then he looked at Billy with something that looked like wonder. "Braveheart who heals. That's your new name?" Billy nodded proudly. "Chief Grey Wolf gave it to me. He said I showed courage by helping someone I didn't know and healing by bringing people together." His pa smiled, and Billy could see tears forming in his eyes. "Your ma would have been so proud, son. She always said you had a gift for seeing the good in people." Swift Eagle and his companions stayed for dinner, sharing stories and gifts with Billy's family. Billy's pa asked many questions about Comanche customs and life, and Swift Eagle answered them all patiently and thoughtfully. As the evening wore on, Billy realized something important was happening. His pa and Swift Eagle were becoming friends too. They were sharing stories about raising children, about working the land, about hoping for a better future. Despite their different backgrounds, they found they had much in common. When it was time for Swift Eagle to leave, he pulled Billy aside for a private conversation. "Brother," Swift Eagle said, "now you go back to your life with your pa. But remember, you have two families now. Comanche people will always welcome you." Billy nodded. "Will I see you again?" Swift Eagle smiled. "Many times, I think. You and I, we connected now in a way that cannot be broken." "And Billy, yes?" "Your job now is to be bridge between our peoples. When your people have trouble with Comanche, they come to you. When Comanche have trouble with white settlers, they come to you. You help both sides understand each other." Billy felt the weight of this responsibility, but also the excitement of it. "I can do that." Swift Eagle clasped Billy's shoulder. "I know you can, Braveheart who heals. You already doing it." Over the following months and years, Billy's life changed in ways he never could have imagined. Word spread throughout the territory about the white boy who had been adopted by the Comanche. Some people thought it was wonderful, others thought it was dangerous, but everyone agreed it was remarkable. Billy found himself serving as a translator and mediator when conflicts arose between settlers and Native Americans. His unique position, trusted by both sides, made him valuable as a peacekeeper. When he was 16, a group of angry settlers wanted to attack a Comanche hunting party that had been spotted near their town. Billy rode out to meet the hunting party and discovered they were led by his old friend Running Bear, who had welcomed him during his adoption ceremony. Billy was able to arrange a peaceful meeting between the two groups, explaining that the Comanche were just passing through on their way to traditional hunting grounds. What could have become a violent confrontation became a successful negotiation about safe passage. "How did you know they meant no harm?" one of the settlers asked Billy afterward. Billy touched the bone carving he still wore around his neck. "Because I know these people. They're not my enemies, they're my family." When Billy was 18, a terrible drought hit the region. Crops were failing, and both white settlers and Native American tribes were struggling to find enough food and water. Billy remembered what Swift Eagle had taught him about reading the land and finding hidden water sources. Billy organized a meeting between the struggling communities, suggesting they pool their knowledge and resources instead of competing with each other. The white settlers knew about digging wells and preserving food, while the Native Americans knew about finding natural springs and hunting in difficult conditions. Working together, the communities survived the drought. More importantly, they learned to see each other as neighbors instead of enemies. Billy's pa watched his son's work with pride and amazement. "I never imagined when you helped that wounded man that it would lead to all this," he said one evening as they sat on their porch. Billy smiled. "Neither did I, Pa. I just did what felt right. And look what came of it. You've probably prevented more fights and saved more lives than most soldiers ever do." Billy thought about this. It was true that his work as a mediator had prevented violence and saved lives, but he had never thought of himself as particularly heroic. He was just using the gifts Swift Eagle and the Comanche people had given him, the ability to see people as individuals rather than enemies, and the knowledge that understanding could overcome fear. When Billy was 21, he received news that Swift Eagle had been chosen as the main chief of their tribal confederation. Billy rode out to the Comanche territory to attend the ceremony, where he was welcomed like a returning son. Swift Eagle, now Chief Swift Eagle, greeted Billy with the same warm smile he had always had. "Brother, you look good. Your work as peacemaker suits you." Billy grinned back. "I learned from the best, brother." At the ceremony, Billy met Comanche warriors and leaders from tribes all across the region. Each one knew his story and welcomed him as family. Billy realized that his network of Comanche brothers and sisters had grown even larger than Swift Eagle had originally predicted. "How many people consider me family now?" Billy asked Swift Eagle during a quiet moment. Swift Eagle looked out across the gathering of hundreds of Comanche people. "Hard to count. Maybe 300-400 warriors and their families. Maybe more. Your story has traveled far. Braveheart who heals. People who never met you still consider you brother because of what you represent." Billy felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of it. One act of kindness to a wounded stranger had created a network of relationships spanning hundreds of miles and touching thousands of lives. As Billy grew older, his reputation as a peacemaker and bridge builder spread even further. Government officials began consulting him about negotiations with Native American tribes. Military leaders asked his advice about preventing conflicts. Religious leaders invited him to speak about the power of compassion to overcome hatred. But Billy never forgot that it all started with a simple choice by a creek, the choice to help someone who needed help, regardless of who they were or where they came from. Billy married a school teacher named Catherine when he was 25, and they had 3 children together. Billy taught his children to speak both English and Comanche, and Swift Eagle became like an uncle to them, visiting regularly and telling them stories about their father's courage. Billy's children grew up understanding that they belonged to multiple worlds, and that their father's gift for bringing people together was something they could learn and carry forward. When Billy was 35, a delegation of government officials came to see him about a major conflict brewing between the army and several Comanche tribes. A young general wanted to force the tribes onto reservations, while the tribes wanted to maintain their traditional way of life. This could turn into a full-scale war, the lead official told Billy. "We Need someone both sides trust to help work out a solution. Billy spent weeks traveling between the army camps and the Comanche tribes, listening to both sides and helping them understand each other's concerns. The negotiations were difficult and sometimes heated, but Billy's presence kept them from breaking down entirely. Finally, they reached an agreement that allowed the Comanche to keep some of their traditional territories in exchange for promises of peaceful coexistence. It wasn't perfect and it wouldn't last forever, but it prevented a war that could have cost hundreds of lives. Swift Eagle, now an elder chief with gray in his hair, found Billy after the final negotiation. "Brother," Swift Eagle said, "when I was dying by that creek 30 years ago, I never could have imagined this. One boy's kindness has changed the history of our peoples." Billy, now a man with children of his own, smiled at his old friend. "We changed it together, brother. All of us who chose to see friends instead of enemies." As Billy entered his later years, he often reflected on how his life had unfolded.